Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Advocacy Through Athletics podcast. Today I am joined by popular Arsenal Twitter personality and one half of the Arsenal Gooners podcast, Mike Feinberg. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great, Kyle. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So just to get a little background on who you are, would you be able to explain for the people at home who you are in 5 sentences or less?
I'm not known for my brevity, but I'd love to. I'm basically a longtime Arsenal supporter, family guy, live in the U.S., discovered Arsenal when I was a kid about 30 years ago, and living over in London, and someone to whom using the Arsenal family to help raise awareness for a charity that's very near and dear to my heart.
Sure. So, growing up, what drew you to Arsenal, and how did you find your home at Arsenal?
Well, when I was 15, my family moved over from the Northern Virginia area, just outside of Washington, D.C., to London. It was not something I really wanted to do because I didn't know any better. But instantly when I got there, it was a whole new world, great opportunities, and the very first thing I wanted to do to try to assimilate into the culture was follow the sports, ride the tube, get on and kind of be a Londoner, if you will. It was right around the time that the football season, the soccer season started, and we lived on the Piccadilly line in London. So there's a stop on the Piccadilly line called Arsenal. It was about 15 or 16 stops away from where I lived, and I just hopped on one Saturday afternoon, went to the stadium and just kind of followed people. Where I ended up was on the north bank of Highbury. I didn't know any better at the time. If you're an Arsenal fan now, you know what that means and how special that place was. And it was back in 1988 when the terraces were still there. You stood, you sang, you just got moved around by the crowds, and it just, the whole thing just really resonated with me. And that year, I went to virtually every home game, and as Arsenal historians will know, at the end of that season was one of the best moments in the 130 some odd years of Arsenal Football Club, winning the league in Anfield on the very final minute of the very final game of the season that was unlike any other. So, to say that it was in my heart from that point forward would be an understatement. And here we are 32 years later, and I'm still as close and closer to the club as I ever have been.
And growing up, being able to be part of that atmosphere and now being able to podcast about it, what role has sports played in your life?
Well, as you can tell from looking at me, I'm not very active in sports from a personal standpoint. I used to be, but unfortunately, I've been more active in other pursuits lately that aren't a little more sedentary. But I've always been a massive sports fan, a massive soccer and football fan. About 5 years ago, I happened to meet somebody through a friend named Andy, who we were both together on the summer tour when Arsenal came to visit the States in 2016. And about a couple of weeks later, we really hit it off where we were getting together. We had the same sense of humor. Just kind of enjoyed each other's company, and I got a call a few weeks later saying, hey, do you want to do an Arsenal podcast? Which seemed like a crazy idea to me. There were other podcasts already. We live in America. I'm American. He's an expat from England who has no English accent anymore. I'm like, who's gonna take us seriously? But I'll try anything once. And so we did it. It was interesting. We learned a lot from our early missteps of doing a podcast. We really got to know some people very well that really helped us out as far as publicity is concerned. And now we're in our 5th season, 220 episodes in, and have just talked to some amazing people that I never would have expected to ever be introduced to, be in the company of, talk to. It's meeting people from within the fan base that you're part of has made a massive difference to me in the last 5 or 10 years for sure.
And just on your journey to stardom, becoming one of the bigger Arsenal podcasts out there, and even being, I listened to the podcast last week, and Alan Smith is awesome. Having that connection is really cool.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that has just come organically through the podcast. We certainly didn't start out in season 1, even season 2, having ex-Arsenal players who, I described that game that Arsenal won the league in 1989. He scored the first goal. He scored a ton of goals when I lived over there and was one of my favorite players. 30 years later, because we have been in this community and we know people who know him, and social media obviously makes a huge difference in all that. He's joined us 3 times on the podcast, and he's helped us with charitable endeavors. He has been someone that I occasionally talk to in direct message on Twitter, and he's a hero of mine, of the sports world. It's surreal. I think you might be overstating a little bit how by using the word fame and that sort of thing. It's more just a niche situation that we couldn't enjoy it more. It's a hobby that has really grown into something very meaningful for us.
And like being able to meet all those people, when did you start realizing you'd be able to have this personality and this platform on Twitter and other platforms like that?
I mean, after our first season, when we went from our friends listening to us because we told them to random people around the world starting to tune in because they had heard about us on other podcasts, or they were following us on Twitter, they saw something that we had tweeted or interacted with. When we started meeting people who followed us through the podcast, and occasionally had a couple of people who we knew who could introduce us to other people, that's really where it started snowballing, because you do a good entertaining interview and are fun and relaxed and not super serious and not super analytical, because that's not our game. I don't know the game of soccer, football better than anybody. I'm frankly not that educated in the finer points of it. I know what I like watching, but I like talking about the game behind the game, the mentality, the feelings of the fan base. And so, it's not an analytical podcast. It's about enjoying the people that are involved. It's about, learning about the Arsenal life. And, in doing so, we've been able to spotlight, opposed to many other podcasts that are really a lot about analytics. We really make it a guest-focused podcast. And I've often said, although this ends up sounding really obnoxious because I'm not making a direct comparison, but a lot of podcasts are like the nightly news, whereas we try to be more like, the Tonight Show or a kind of a guest-based variety program in a sense. And we found that differentiates us, from a lot of other podcasts, and we really, really enjoy doing it.
In the past 5 years, your podcast has really grown, but I kind of want to talk about Gooners versus Cancer now and see how that all started and how this came out of that podcast. So where did Gooners versus Cancer really start for you?
Well, a little bit of background. My father, unfortunately, fought very, very hard, but succumbed to leukemia back in 2010. He was 66 years old. It was way, way too early. He had a lot of life still to live, and he fought with every bit of energy that he could put forward for his wife and for his children, and it affected me greatly for a number of years, and I always kind of wanted to do something to honor him and to help others. But the opportunity first came to me because I'm in a career in the financial services industry, and I started working with a company in 2013 where the owner and person in charge of that company also had a father who passed away from leukemia and had been doing a charity event, a local charity event here in Virginia, actually a car show, an antique car show that was to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So in 2013, I dove into that, said this is going to be my cause as well. I will, I'm not a charity organizer, but I'll do whatever I can to help on the day, to help try to get donations. Third Sunday of every September. In fact, it's this coming Sunday. However, as time went by and the podcast began to grow, and we started having contact with people who could really help us out, the Alan Smiths of the world, other journalists like Amy Lawrence, and in fact contacts within Arsenal themselves, I started realizing that I had a platform that I could kind of shift from just being a helper to opening an entire new line of fundraising through a charity that capitalizes on the generosity and is just tries to get a small slice of the amazing generosity of Gooners around the world. And so in 2017, I very loosely started Gooners versus Cancer as a concept. I very, very lightly promoted it, gained some, maybe $800 to $1,000 of donations, a couple thousand more from family and friends, and that was that, and donated it to the pile. Along with the car show to go to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. In year two, I made it a little bit bigger. We had a couple of Arsenal people like Alan Smith, like Amy Lawrence, who's a very, very well-respected journalist who had books that had come out and agreed to sign books. We realized that by offering people who bid over a certain amount the ability to get something back for it, we could raise awareness. And so in year 2, we raised maybe $5,000 or $6,000, which to me was fantastic. It wasn't until last year that we really went very wide with it, because when Arsenal announced they were going to be doing a summer tour of the U.S. in 4 different cities, it occurred to me that there would be opportunities to get a large number of excited Arsenal supporters in centralized locations. And if I didn't capitalize on that to raise awareness, I'd have missed an incredible opportunity. We had a lot of things suddenly to give away, and 10 days of just massive festive fundraising to do in those 4 cities, and we capitalized on it. We had signage, we had buy-in from the host cities in those areas, and through a number of different ways, we ended up raising over $16,000 last year. It's a nice growth from the year before, and it just blew me away. And so that was really the first year we really commercialized the concept of Gooners versus Cancer, and made it so that you were not donating to a person who was going to take your money and donate it to charity. You are now donating, effective last year, directly to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and they provide us a lot of support.
And that's something I really love about sport, being able to use one thing that you have in common for one thing you love so much, just being able to bring people together and help make a change. How has it been having Arsenal help make a change for your charity?
Well, I mean, there's the club themselves, and there's the fact that the club begets a certain type of supporter. And I'm biased, clearly, but Arsenal supporters, Gooners around the world, tend to be considerably more generous, considerably more tolerant, considerably more everything good. There is a segment of Arsenal supporters that can be obnoxious as well, as with any large group of people, but in general, Gooners are good-hearted people. Arsenal as a club has, since we have met people within Arsenal, supporters club liaisons, members of the board and the administration team of Arsenal, they have helped get behind us by providing us with items for the charity, by, in some cases, providing people for us to talk to on the podcast. We have a lot of different ways of contacting people. There's Twitter, there's word of mouth, there's our podcast, there's being on other podcasts. We don't love spamming people, but this is a once a year, pretty concise, hey, this is going on right now, check out what you can win, check out the charity, we'd love your support. And that's been going on for about 2 weeks now, and 99% of the people who take the time to respond, and there are many, just either tell us about a personal story and why this cause is meaningful to them. They tell us, great job with what you're doing. We really support you. Just a lot of positive feedbacks and a lot of donations that have come from that, that kind of reaching out. So there's so many different important things right now that need help financially and time-wise and charitable-wise. Social justice cases, health systems, coronavirus going on. I mean, this is a year like none other. And, for people to really be willing to give of themselves, of their money, of their time, just that movement towards everybody working for the same cause has been humbling. And just, it makes me proud to be an Arsenal supporter because of the way that Arsenal supporters respond to something like this.
And just having the club being so active in these type of things, whether it be social justice or other things like that, and even when they're not, I like how players hold them accountable when they should be speaking up on things. Being able to be connected with players, how has your experience been trying to get players to help advocate with you?
Professional soccer teams, football teams are among the hardest to crack when it comes to getting into the players. Obviously, we've had much more luck establishing relationships with former players. Current players, it's a little harder. We did have a unique experience, though, because through the podcast last year, we were able to get media passes for the summer tour games, which provided us some access to players, coaches. We didn't want to mix professionalism of covering the team as a media member and getting a lot of access with, hey, we're pushing an agenda through the charity. We want to have a long-standing relationship with the club. We don't want it to be, we're using them. To have a current player reach out and say, hey, could you get Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to donate some of his boots? That's hopefully something that in the future will be large enough and partnered enough with the club to be able to do. At this young stage in the life of this charitable endeavor, it is more about former players and people close to the club than it is about the club themselves.
But bringing it to current events, you talked about how Arsenal had the ICC tournament travel around to different places in the U.S. like Colorado, But now with COVID-19, what kind of challenges are you facing fundraising-wise, not being able to be in person with people?
Well, you have to reinvent how you're doing things, and I've learned a lot. I will say that as of maybe late June, I was somewhat ambivalent about doing it this year. I was thinking, should this just be a year off? Arsenal was originally supposed to come for a shortened tour this summer until coronavirus completely changed all that. And we were looking forward to fundraising. I believe it was going to be in New York. When that got canceled and everything got changed around, it took a lot of wind out of my sails. But I found my mojo, I guess, in the middle of July. I started brainstorming on ideas. What really, really helped is that I got the cooperation of the official Arsenal America Supporters Club, which is a massive multi-thousand person supporters base here in the U.S. So with their support and their agreement to help with publicity and to essentially partner with us, I said, all right, it'll be hard, let's do it. And somehow, some way, I hope that we can come close to matching last year. You have to earn trust. You don't get the chance to talk to people about it. It's all about direct communication. So it's been challenging. The number of things that you can win in an auction now is much larger. We wanted to blow people away with, I've got a chance to win 9 really good prizes. This is an established, growing brand that, people can donate to. They're donating directly to a charity. It's been a year where I've had to do a lot more direct marketing, if you will. And it's been challenging. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to spam people and make them hate your cause because they're tired of hearing about it. I push the envelope on that sometimes, but I've just tried to really let people know about it, let the word of mouth grow. And then with every year, I take what I've learned the previous year and get more organized and more advanced notice and really just push it through when the time comes.
And just looking to the future, what are some goals that you hope to have for your organization within a year? And what are some goals and dreams that you have for your organization in 3 years?
The biggest goal right now is to raise awareness, to obviously collect as much as we can for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. But ultimately, next year, I think we need to take this to the next level. My hope is to have even more cooperation from the club, more items to bid on. My sincere hope is to be able to do in-person fundraising as well as online fundraising next year. Combine what worked last year with what works this year. 3 years from now, I would certainly like for Gooners versus Cancer to be its own 501c3 company, its own charity with its own board and kind of decentralize some of the work and the effort. I'd love to be able to kind of broaden and enlarge the scope of the organization and, again, take the fundraising to the next level.
Being an Arsenal fan and just being part of this community, it really makes me proud that someone like you, Mike, that's out here doing stuff like this and making a difference with their platform. Mike, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and just to let the people know where can they get a little more information about Gooners versus Cancer.
Absolutely. You can follow on Twitter at Gooners v Cancer. There's no S in it. It's Gooners v Cancer. Same on Instagram, Gooners v Cancer. We occasionally post updates on Instagram. The website for donations and where the auction is, which includes rules of the auction, how it works. I keep calling it an auction. It's a raffle. Rules of the raffle, how it works, and what the prizes are. And there's 8, soon to be 9 amazing prizes that you can bid on and be part of and have a chance to win. That's all on goonersvcancer.com or goonersversuscancer.com. Either one will take you to the page, which is a Leukemia Lymphoma Society webpage. You can also find out more information. We have weekly updates on our podcast, which is the Gooners Podcast, at the Gooners Pod on Twitter. Be entertained, and especially this time of year in August, September timeframe, you can hear a lot about what's going on with Gooners versus Cancer as well. And Kyle, I appreciate you reaching out to me. I've enjoyed talking to you about a passion project of mine that mixes my 2 favorite things together: trying to do good for the world in a meaningful way, and just meeting and conversing and sharing common experiences with fellow Gooners. It couldn't get better than that.
Again, thank you for coming on, and I love being able to be part of this community, and I love being able to help share your story.
Thank you for doing that, Kyle. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. Thank you, Mike.